I was already screaming when I realized I was too late. "Stop! Don't turn the key!" The words tore out of my chest before my brain could catch up, raw and panicked, the kind of sound you make when your body decides for you. I didn't remember choosing to run. I only knew I was moving, feet pounding against wet asphalt, the rain-slicked parking lot blurring beneath me as my shoes slipped and caught again. Cold air burned my lungs. My heart hammered so hard, it felt like it was trying to break free of my ribs, like if it hit any harder, I would simply split open right there. His car lights blinked once. Just once. That tiny click of sound felt impossibly loud. Final. My stomach dropped so violently I thought I might be sick. My throat closed. If he turned the engine on, if his hand twisted that key even a fraction more, there wouldn't be time to scream again. There wouldn't be time for regret or explanation or apology. Just fire and metal and silence. He froze. Time stretched thin, like it might snap if either of us moved. Rain soaked my hair instantly, cold rivulets sliding down my neck, sticking my uniform to my skin until it felt like a second, heavier layer I couldn't peel off. My hands shook so badly I had to clench them into fists. Every instinct in my body was screaming that this was it. This was the moment my life split cleanly in two. Before I opened my mouth, and after. My name is Anna. I'm a waitress. Not brave, not special. Just a woman who learned early how to keep her head down and her smile polite. And the man gripping the steering wheel, staring at me like I'd lost my mind, like I was an unexpected problem he didn't know how to solve, was a mafia boss who didn't know his car was about to kill him. And somehow, God help me, I was in love with him. That realization hit me all at once, sharp and terrifying, right there in the rain. Not later, not in hindsight, right then, like my heart chose the worst possible moment to tell the truth. I wasn't supposed to be brave. I wasn't supposed to notice things that could get me hurt. I was supposed to refill coffee cups, remember regulars' orders, laugh at jokes that weren't funny, and look away when men stared too long or spoke too close. I was supposed to collect my tips at the end of the night, count them twice because I didn't trust my luck, and go home alone to my tiny apartment where the hallway light flickered like it was tired of existing. That was how my life worked. Simple, predictable, safe enough. Until him. The first night he walked into the diner, nothing dramatic happened. No guns flashing under coats, no shouting, no doors kicked open, no entourage fanning out like a warning sign. Just a man in a dark coat, tall and unhurried, who stepped inside as if he already knew exactly where he wanted to sit. The corner booth. The one with a clear view of the door, the windows, the counter, and the narrow hallway that led to the bathrooms. I noticed that without knowing why it mattered. I told myself I was imagining things. Still, my spine straightened as I grabbed a menu. The bell above the door chimed softly behind him, and the sound felt wrong, like it didn't belong to him. Still, the air changed. I felt it before I understood it, a subtle pressure, like the room leaned toward him without realizing it was doing so. Conversations softened, voices dropping half a notch. Laughter thinned out, losing its careless edge. Even the clatter of plates behind the counter seemed to dull, as if the diner itself was listening. Why is everyone so quiet, I thought. Why am I holding my breath? I caught myself doing exactly that as I approached his table, coffee pot trembling slightly in my hand. My fingers were steady a second ago. Now they felt like they belonged to someone else. I told myself it was nothing, just a long shift, too much caffeine, not enough sleep. "Evening," I said, forcing my voice into its usual warmth. It sounded thinner than I liked. He looked up, and the world narrowed. God, that was the only word that came to mind, heavy and breathless, like a prayer I didn't believe in but still wanted answered. His eyes were calm, not soft, not cold, controlled. The kind of gaze that didn't rush and didn't flinch, like he'd learned a long time ago that stillness could be a weapon. He didn't smile. Not really. His mouth barely moved as his eyes traced my face. not in a way that felt hungry or rude, but thorough, observant, like he was filing me away. I hated how aware I suddenly was of everything. The way my hair clung damply to my cheek from the rain outside, the faint coffee stain on my apron I hadn't managed to scrub out, the fact that my heartbeat was too loud, surely loud enough for him to hear. "Coffee," he said, his voice low, even, with an accent I couldn't quite place. "Black." Something about the way he spoke made it feel less like an order and more like a test. I nodded too quickly. "Coming right up." When I turned to leave, already scolding myself for staring, he spoke again. "What's your name?" I stopped. Waitresses don't usually get asked that. Not like this. Not without a grin or a smirk or an expectation attached. I hesitated, then glanced down at the small plastic tag pinned to my chest. "Anna," I said. He repeated it under his breath, slowly, like he was tasting the sound. "Anna." My stomach tightened. Heat slid down my spine, unwelcome and confusing. Why did that feel intimate? Why did it feel like he'd touched me without laying a finger on me? I walked back to the counter, annoyed with myself. Get it together, Anna. He's just a customer. A man with money and good posture and eyes that see too much. That's all. Why him, of all people? I poured his coffee with hands that were finally steady again, relief washing over me as the routine took over. Coffee, saucer, spoon. Simple things. Things I understood. But when I set the cup down in front of him, our fingers brushed. Barely. It still felt like a spark. I pulled my hand back too fast, heat rushing to my face. He watched me, something unreadable flickering in his eyes. Not amusement, not irritation, something quieter. "Careful," he said. "I am," though I wasn't sure what I meant. He didn't push, just leaned back slightly, one arm draped along the seat. Posture relaxed in a way that felt practiced, like he knew exactly how much space to take up. I walked away again, my mind buzzing. The rest of the shift passed in fragments, the hiss of the grill, the smell of grease and sugar, the scrape of plates, and always, in the back of my awareness, him, the way he didn't look at his phone, the way his gaze lifted every time someone new walked in, the way he seemed completely unbothered by the stares he occasionally received. When I refilled his cup, he looked at me again, closer this time. "You work here every night?" he asked. "Most nights. Rent doesn't pay itself." Something like understanding crossed his face. Not pity, something harder. "You live nearby?" he asked. The question should have bothered me. It didn't. That bothered me more. "Not far," I said carefully. He nodded once, like that confirmed something he'd already suspected. Then he looked down at his coffee, effectively dismissing me. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I felt disappointed. Why am I like this? I thought, wiping down the counter too aggressively. Why does his attention feel like oxygen? When my shift ended, he was already gone. The booth was empty, the cup clean. No sign he'd ever been there at all. For a strange, irrational moment, I wondered if I'd imagined him. Then he came back the next night. Same dark coat, same corner booth. My chest tightened when I saw him. Not fear, anticipation. And that scared me more than anything. As I approached his table again, I felt it. That same subtle shift in the room, that same tightening of the air. This time, I noticed other things too. The way a man at the counter glanced over, then quickly looked away. The way my manager's eyes followed him, sharp and wary. I set the coffee down without being asked. "Black," I said. His gaze lifted, a faint curve touching his mouth. Not a smile, and acknowledgement. "You remembered." "I remember a lot of things," I said before I could stop myself. Why did I say that? His eyes lingered on mine. That can be dangerous. The words settled between us, heavy and deliberate. "So can forgetting," I replied quietly. For a long moment, neither of us moved. The tension wasn't loud. It didn't demand attention. It coiled, slow and patient, like something alive. I was painfully aware of the space between us, how little it would take to close it, how much it would cost if I did. I should walk away, I thought. So why couldn't I? He broke the silence first. You're always this honest. No, I said. Just tonight. Why tonight? I hesitated, then truth slipped out before fear could stop it. Because you're watching. Something shifted in his expression then. Surprise, interest, something warmer, quickly hidden. Good, he said. I'd hate to be boring. My heart stumbled over itself. As I turned to leave, his voice followed me low enough that only I could hear. Anna. I stopped, slowly. Yes, be careful, he said. This time it didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like concern. I walked back behind the counter on legs that felt unsteady, my mind racing. Who was he really? And why did it feel like I'd just stepped onto something I wouldn't be able to step off of again? The neon lights hummed above me. The diner breathed on, oblivious. And somewhere deep in my chest, something dangerous had already begun to grow. His face wasn't cruel. That was the unsettling part. I'd grown up learning how to read men quickly, how to spot impatience, hunger, entitlement, the small tells that warned you when to smile wider or step back. Cruelty usually announced itself. Loud voices, sharp movements, eyes that took without asking. But his face held none of that, just calm eyes, steady and deliberate, like nothing startled him anymore. A controlled expression that didn't beg for attention, didn't chase it, yet somehow gathered it anyway. The kind of handsome that didn't perform, it simply existed. And when his gaze settled on me, it felt personal. Not invasive, not leering, personal in the most dangerous way. Like he wasn't just looking at my face or my body, but at the small, private things I didn't show anyone. Like he could see the tiredness I hid behind sarcasm, the loneliness I joked away, the quiet wanting I pretended not to have. Coffee, he said. Black. His voice was low, unhurried, like the word had weight, like even something as ordinary as coffee deserved intention. I nodded, too quickly, annoyed with myself for how fast my heart started beating. When I turned to leave, already rehearsing my usual detachment, he added, quietly, carefully, as if he didn't want anyone else to hear, "What's your name?" I stopped. That question should have been harmless. Customers ask sometimes, usually with a grin, usually with expectations. This felt different. It wasn't casual. It wasn't lazy curiosity. It felt precise. I glanced down at my name tag, suddenly very aware of the cheap plastic pinned to my chest, of how small my name looked printed there. Anna, I said. He repeated it under his breath, slowly. Anna. The way he said it sent a strange ripple through me, like a sound echoing too deep. My stomach tightened, my skin warmed. Something inside me shifted, quiet but unmistakable, like a lock turning. Why did that feel intimate? I told myself it was ridiculous. He was just saying a name, my name. But it didn't feel like that. It felt like he'd placed it somewhere careful, somewhere he intended to remember. I walked away annoyed at myself, my shoulders tense as I headed back toward the counter. Get a grip. Why him? Why now? Why did my chest feel tight, like I'd just narrowly missed something dangerous, or stepped right into it? I caught my reflection in the stainless steel behind the counter. Same apron, same tired eyes, same woman who had sworn she wouldn't complicate her life for anyone. I scoffed softly under my breath. Then I looked back. He was watching me. Not openly, not in a way anyone else would notice, but I felt it, that awareness tugging at me, making my skin prickle. When our eyes met again, he didn't look away. Neither did I. The moment stretched until it almost hurt, until my pulse felt loud enough to give me away. Then a customer cleared their throat, and the spell broke. He came back the next night. Same booth, same coffee, same unreadable gaze. I told myself it was coincidence, Diners had regulars. People liked routines. It didn't mean anything. The third night, too, and the fourth. By the fifth, it was impossible not to notice the pattern. It became a rhythm I could feel before I saw him. Around the same time every night, the bell above the door would chime, and something in me would settle and tighten all at once. Relief and tension tangled together, impossible to separate. I hated that my body learned his schedule faster than my mind did. I hated that I found myself checking the clock, counting minutes, pretending it was just habit. Somewhere between wiping down his table, always cleaner than it needed to be, and pretending not to notice the way his eyes followed me as I moved through the diner, I started waiting for him. That realization landed like a warning siren in my chest. Waiting meant caring. Caring meant attachment. And attachment, in my experience, always came with a cost. That scared me. Because men like him didn't just wander into diners on quiet streets. They didn't sit alone in corner booths unless they had reasons. And they definitely didn't look at waitresses like they were something to be considered. Men like him came with consequences. I learned who he was by accident. I hadn't meant to listen. I was just dropping off plates in the kitchen when I heard my name spoken too sharply to ignore. "Your girl out there," one of the cooks muttered. "She's serving him again?" another replied, voice low. A pause, heavy, charged. Then a name, spoken like a curse. I froze behind the swinging door, one hand still gripping the edge of a tray. My pulse roared in my ears so loudly it drowned out the sizzle of the grill. Money, power, disappearances. The words overlapped, whispered too fast, like they were afraid of being overheard by the walls themselves. I felt cold all at once. No, I thought. No, no, no. My mind scrambled for logic, for denial. People exaggerated. Kitchens were rumor factories. Still, my hands had started shaking, and I couldn't stop them. The name replayed in my head, each repetition heavier than the last. I should have stopped serving him. I knew that, the sensible part of me, the part that had survived this long by choosing safety over curiosity, screamed it. Walk away. Ask another waitress to take the table. Say you're busy. Say anything. Instead, I picked up the coffee pot. My legs felt stiff as I walked back out into the diner, every step measured, every breath shallow. He looked up as I approached, like he'd sensed me coming. I set the cup down with hands that shook despite my efforts to steady them. He noticed. His gaze sharpened, subtle but immediate. "You're nervous tonight," he said. I forced a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. "I'm always nervous," I lied. The lie tasted thin, weak. He didn't call me out on it. Instead, he studied me for a long moment, eyes moving over my face with quiet focus, not judging, assessing, like he was recalculating something. Then, softer, lower, meant only for me, he said, "You shouldn't be." The words landed like a promise, or a threat. Heat rushed through me, sudden and unwelcome, curling low in my stomach. I hated how much I wanted his attention in that moment, hated how my body responded to him even as my mind screamed caution, hated how safe those words felt despite everything I'd just learned. Before I could stop myself, I asked, "Why?" His mouth curved just slightly, not quite a smile, something darker, something that acknowledged the question without fully answering it. "For both of us." The words settled in my chest and stayed there, pressing. My heart pounded hard enough that I wondered if he could hear it from across the room. This was the moment. I felt it clearly. The moment I should have stepped back, put distance between us, unlocked the door, and told myself this was where it ended. Instead, I stepped closer. Not all at once, just a single step, subtle enough that I could pretend it didn't mean anything. But the space between us changed immediately, charged and alive. I could smell him now, clean soap, rain, something deeper beneath it that I couldn't name. My skin prickled with awareness. Why am I doing this? I asked myself. Because walking away suddenly felt worse. The complication crept in slowly after that, like poison you don't taste until it's already working. It started small. Men I didn't recognize lingering outside the diner when my shift ended, leaning against cars, pretending to check their phones while their eyes tracked the door. I told myself they were just passing through, just bored, just nothing. But my shoulders stayed tense as I walked to my car. Then came the locker. I opened it one night to grab my bag and froze. Everything was exactly where I'd left it, but wrong. My jacket folded differently, my bag unzipped. Someone had been there, someone who didn't want to steal, someone who wanted me to know. A warning. My hands shook as I closed the locker again. I stood there longer than necessary, breathing through the fear, forcing myself not to panic. "This is what you get," a voice in my head whispered. "This is what happens when you get close to men like him." Another night, my manager pulled me aside. He didn't look angry, he looked worried. That scared me more. "Your friend brings trouble," he said quietly, glancing toward the windows. Friend. The word felt absurd and dangerous all at once. I let out a short laugh that sounded wrong even to my own ears. "He's just a customer." My manager didn't smile. "Customers don't make people nervous," he replied. "Be careful, Anna." Fear curled in my stomach, tight and cold. I nodded, promised nothing, and went back to work knowing I was already too close to pull away cleanly. The deeper we went, the quieter it became between us. It was subtle at first. He stopped sitting so close when the diner emptied, stopped letting his knee brush mine when I passed, stopped leaning in when he spoke. No accidental touches, no shared warmth, just distance and looks heavy with restraint. The silence between us changed too. It wasn't charged in the same way anymore. It felt controlled, managed, like he was holding something back with both hands. Why was he pulling away now? The question gnawed at me through every shift. Had I imagined the tension? Had I crossed a line without realizing it? Or had he decided I was too much of a risk? One night, after hours of saying nothing at all, he finally spoke. "You should forget me." The words were quiet, almost gentle. They landed harder than anything he'd said before. My chest ached instantly, sharp and deep, like something vital had been struck. "Why?" I asked before I could stop myself. He didn't answer right away. His jaw tightened. When he finally spoke, his voice was lower, rougher. "Because I won't always be able to protect you." Protect me. The words echoed in my head long after he left the diner that night. I stood at the counter, staring at the empty booth, my hands flat against the cold surface, trying to make sense of the ache spreading through my chest. I told myself it was over. I told myself I'd survived worse heartbreaks, louder ones, messier ones, ones that came with shouting and slammed doors. This one just hurt more because it never fully began, because it lived in looks and almosts, and things I wasn't allowed to ask for. I told myself I'd forget him. Then came the rain, the night everything shattered. It was late, later than usual. The rain had picked up into a steady downpour, loud enough to drown out the city. I was locking up, the metal of the door cold beneath my fingers, when something made me stop. A shape, a reflection, something wrong. I turned slowly and noticed the car. His car, parked under the streetlight, rain streaking down its dark surface. For a moment, I just stared at it, my chest tightening for reasons I didn't understand yet. Then I saw it. Something beneath it caught the light, metal where there shouldn't be metal. My breath caught painfully in my throat. The world seemed to narrow, sharpen, every sound too loud and too far away at the same time. My body moved before my mind could catch up, before fear could argue. I ran. My shoes slipped on wet pavement. My heart slammed against my ribs. My thoughts fractured into fragments. No, no, too late, please. And that's when it happened. Me screaming, him frozen, death waiting inches away. The memory burned itself into me in real time, the way his hand hovered over the key, the way his eyes locked onto mine, confusion flickering into something sharper as my voice tore through the rain. When his men poured into the lot moments later, everything exploded into motion, doors flying open, voices barking orders, guns drawn so fast they seemed to appear out of thin air. I stumbled back, my knees weak, the edge of the building rough beneath my palm as I struggled to stay upright. I felt small, exposed, terrifyingly visible. He turned to me slowly. The rain soaked his hair, darkened his coat. His face was unreadable now, carved into something hard and controlled, but his eyes searched mine. "How did you know?" he asked. My mouth was dry, my hands shook. "Because someone wanted you dead," I said, the truth slipping out raw and unfiltered. His gaze darkened, not with anger, not with suspicion, but something like pain, something I hadn't expected and didn't know how to carry. That was the moment I understood the truth with brutal clarity. Saving him didn't bring us closer, it pushed us apart, because now I wasn't just a waitress who knew his name, I was a weakness someone had tried to exploit. He disappeared. Days passed. At first I counted them without meaning to. 1, 2, 3. I kept expecting something, sirens, footsteps outside my door, his shadow across the street. Every morning I woke up with my heart already racing, like my body knew something my mind was still trying to deny. Then weeks passed. Time didn't soften anything. It stretched the ache thinner, sharper, until it lived in places I couldn't ignore. I quit the diner without ceremony, didn't say goodbye to anyone except my manager, who looked at me for a long moment and didn't ask why. He just nodded, like he'd been expecting it. I moved apartments, packed my life into boxes with shaking hands, left behind the place where I used to lie awake, listening to cars pass, wondering if one of them was his. The new place was smaller, quieter, farther from everything familiar. I chose it because it felt temporary, like I didn't want to put roots down anywhere that knew my name. I slept with the lights on, every night. Not because I thought it would stop anything, but because darkness felt too close, too heavy. Every sound made me jump. Pipes knocking, a neighbor coughing, footsteps in the hallway. My body stayed coiled tight, waiting for something terrible to confirm what my fear already believed. I told myself I was relieved. Relieved that he was gone, relieved that the danger had passed me by, relieved that I could breathe without wondering who was watching. So why did it feel like I'd lost a limb? The absence was physical. I felt it in the quiet moments, the in-between spaces where my mind used to wander toward him without permission. I missed the weight of his gaze, the way he listened like words mattered, the way the world seemed sharper when he was near. I missed the tension more than the comfort, and that scared me. What kind of person misses danger? I stopped checking the window, stopped flinching every time a car slowed outside. I tried to become invisible again, tried to fold myself back into the smaller life I understood. It didn't work. Then one night, there was a knock. Not loud, not frantic. 3 slow taps. My body reacted before my thoughts did. My heart slammed so hard it stole my breath. Every instinct screamed his name, even as my mind searched for reasons it couldn't be him. He was gone. He had disappeared. This was supposed to be safer now. This was supposed to be over. The knock came again. 3 taps. Measured. Familiar. I knew it was him before I opened the door. My hand hovered over the lock, trembling. I told myself I didn't have to answer. I told myself this was a mistake. But my feet carried me forward anyway, like they'd made the decision long before I caught up. When I opened the door, the world narrowed to the space between us. He looked different. tired in a way that went beyond sleeplessness, raw, stripped down, like whatever armor he usually wore had been set aside, at least for tonight. His face was sharper, eyes darker, carrying something heavy that made my chest ache instantly. Human. So human it undid me. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The hallway light flickered softly behind him, casting shadows across his face. Rain clung to his coat again, the familiar scent hitting me like a memory I hadn't been ready for. He tried to stay away, he said finally. His voice was rougher than I remembered, like it had been worn thin. It didn't work. The words cut through me, sharp and unexpected. I felt them settle deep, stirring everything I'd worked so hard to bury. My throat tightened, and when I spoke, my voice shook despite my effort to sound steady. You don't get to come back when it's convenient. The accusation wasn't angry, it was tired, honest. It carried every night I slept with the lights on, every moment I wondered if he was alive, every time I almost said his name out loud and stopped myself. I know, he said quietly. No defense, no excuses. That's why I came, to say goodbye. Goodbye. The word sliced through me with surgical precision, clean, devastating. My chest burned as if I'd inhaled something sharp. For a heartbeat, I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. Say something, I told myself. Don't let this end like this. But my body betrayed me again. He stepped closer. Not fast, not aggressive, just enough to shrink the space between us until the air felt charged, alive with everything we hadn't said. His hand hovered near my waist, not touching, not claiming, asking. The restraint in that gesture nearly broke me. My heart pounded so hard I was sure he could hear it. My thoughts spiraled. Walk away, close the door, protect yourself. But my feet stayed rooted. My fingers curled into the fabric of my sleeve like it could anchor me. What if loving you ruins everything? I whispered. The question slipped out before fear could stop it. It wasn't hypothetical. It was everything I'd been afraid to admit. My job, my safety, the fragile version of myself I'd spent years building. He didn't answer right away. When he did, his voice was steady, certain in a way that terrified me. What if it saves it? I hated how badly I wanted to believe him, hated how easily my defenses cracked at the sound of his voice, hated how my body leaned toward him even as my mind screamed caution. Loving him felt like standing on the edge of something vast, beautiful and lethal all at once. For a moment, the world held its breath. Then the final twist came too late. A gunshot. Outside. Sharp. Deafening. Real. Chaos exploded instantly, shouting, footsteps, someone yelling my name from somewhere I couldn't see. My body froze, shock locking me in place for a fraction of a second that could have cost everything. He didn't hesitate. He shoved me behind him without thinking, his body moving on instinct, solid and unyielding. I stumbled back against the wall, heart racing, breath coming in short, panicked gasps. He stood between me and the open doorway, already scanning, already bracing for what came next. That was when I realized the truth. This wasn't just about love. This was about choice, about who I was willing to become when fear demanded silence, about whether I would keep shrinking my life to fit inside safety or step forward even when it terrified me. The shouting grew louder. Someone cursed. Another gunshot echoed down the street. I pressed my hands against the wall, trying to steady myself, trying to memorize this feeling, fear braided with clarity. When it was over fast. He turned back to me, breathing hard. There was blood on his sleeve. Not his. The sight made my stomach twist, but I didn't look away. I forced myself to stand straighter, to meet his gaze without flinching. He reached out like he wanted to touch me, then stopped himself. "I have to go," he said. I nodded, even though every part of me screamed no. He left that night the same way he always did, quietly, decisively, carrying danger with him like a shadow. The door closed behind him with a soft click that felt louder than any gunshot. I stood alone in my apartment, heart racing, hands shaking, the echo of his presence still clinging to the air. And I knew, deep in my bones, that I would never be the girl who served coffee and stayed quiet again. Some loves don't end, they transform you. And even now, when I hear a car start in the rain, my heart remembers the night I screamed, and the man who listened.